Hello again, this is Sam Houston, and welcome to My Front Porch. Contempt before investigation. Snap conclusions based on only part of a story seldom render sound judgments. In today's world of internet access and social media, there are thousands of experts who pass along information based on something they read, something they heard, or something they were told. The problem is that so many times the information that gets passed on to the masses is incorrect or simply completely fabricated to sway public opinion for a political purpose. Unfortunately, people sometimes make up their mind based on false information and then are unwilling to change or modify their opinion upon learning the truth. A friend of mine who makes his living as a mediator told me a story about a dispute he handled recently. A man had died and left two heirs, a son and a daughter. The siblings both lived in the same small town, and they were scheduled for mediation because they had a serious dispute between them. Each believed the other had taken inappropriate steps in dealing with the father's estate. On the day of the mediation, the brother and sister would not look at each other as they sat around the conference table. Each had turned in their chairs so that their back pointed to the sibling. There was no eye contact, no interaction, no hello or how are you. There was only body language which shouted anger and hate. After some perfunctory review of the associated documents, the mediator began. The air was as thick as sand burrs in an uncut hay pasture as the mediator positioned himself between the two litigants and then slowly and calmly asked the daughter of the deceased if she was unhappy with her brother. Immediately, the woman responded with, "Of course I am. Who wouldn't be mad at someone who was trying to cheat their own sister? I can't believe the things he's done, and Dad would be so disappointed in him." The brother started to respond, but stopped when the mediator simply raised his hand indicating, "Stop." The mediator then looked back at the sister and asked her for specifics of what the brother had done. The sister responded that her father had all sorts of farm equipment, like tractors and hay balers and grain trucks, all parked in a lot outside his house at the time of his death. Now the equipment was simply gone, just flat gone. Some neighbors told her that her brother had snuck in the place in the middle of the night to avoid detection, and then drove off with the farm implements. The neighbor also suggested that the brother had probably taken the equipment out of state and sold it. The mediator then turned to the brother and told him it was now time for him to respond. The brother nodded his head and said, "Of course I have the equipment. I went and moved it to my place so it'd be safe from anyone stealing it. Since Dad no longer was living at the farm, there was no one to keep an eye on things. I also wanted to start doing repairs and some maintenance on the equipment so it would bring the maximum amount of money to the estate if we decided to conduct a sale. All of it's located at my house, all washed up, cleaned up, and ready to go to market, just like Dad asked me to do. You can come by and look for yourself." Upon hearing her brother's explanation, all the sister could do was utter a perceptible, "Oh." Then the brother added, "If that was bothering you, why didn't you just ask me? Have I ever stolen anything or done something dishonest? What makes you think I'd ever cheat you?" Then the mediator asked the brother why he was so upset at his sister. The brother was quick to assert that right after his dad's death, $14,000 was missing from the bank account. He knew his sister had access to the account, and she must have stolen the money because no one else had the checkbook. Somebody at the coffee shop had told him that he'd seen his sister at the Ford dealer looking at new cars, so he was sure she was planning to buy a car with her ill-gotten gains. When the mediator asked the sister to respond to the allegations, she looked at her brother in complete bewilderment and said, "You know I've been taking care of Dad's finances for him for years. When I started to get bills for his funeral and last expenses, I simply went ahead and paid them like I always did with his regular bills. You know Daddy always liked to have his bills paid on time. I knew they were going to have to be paid before we could settle the estate, so I went ahead and did it. It's all right there in the bank statements. Why would you think I'd steal money from my own brother? If you had a question, why didn't you just ask me? Well, in about 30 seconds, the brother and sister were hugging each other, apologizing profusely and telling the mediator the case was over. All it took was asking a few questions and getting a few simple facts, and the misunderstanding all went away, as did the anger and the pain. And the information they'd gotten at the coffee shop and from the neighbor, it was merely gossip, unfounded information which led to hurt feelings and heartaches. I understand that the estate settled quickly. It would seem that when you only know one side of a story, you're only half smart. And when the part you know comes from an unreliable or unknowing source, you may not be smart at all. Thought for the day: if you don't know where you're going, every road will get you nowhere. Henry Kissinger. Until next time, I'll keep riding the storm.
You've been listening to From My Front Porch with Sam Houston. Brought to you by the Granbury Theater Company. You can catch Sam's column every week in the print edition of the Gatesville Messenger or online at gatesvillemessenger.com.